This is Tom Jacobs from tdjacobs.com and also healingsuicide.com. I'm an evolutionary astrologer and also an energy worker and a channel. And at tdjacobs.com, there are a bunch of tools, including resources on Lilith, including the True Black Moon Lilith Natal Report and the book Lilith Healing the Wild, which is also available on Amazon and Kindle. Through my site, it's a PDF ebook. And there's a Lilith intensive. There's an MP3 set which covers in depth some more themes building on the story in the book. And then also in April 4th through 7th, 2019, I will do a 4-day in-person Lilith Healing Intensive for 6 people in the Portland, Oregon area for an in-depth chance to get into and clear old debris related to Lilith. Anyway, so another video in the series on Lilith natal aspects with different planets. This one's on Mars today. And I first want to be really clear that I use the true black moon, also known as the osculating apogee, not the oscillating, but osculating, O-S-C-U-L-A-T-I-N-G, osculating. And I want to be clear because even people who have bought the Lilith natal report have written me and said, wait a minute, that's not where my Lilith is, or what's going on? And the deal is that the mean position, the averaged out position, is what's most readily available in software and online, and most interpretations of Lilith and astrology about the black moon are about the average position. And this is because our minds, our linear logical selves, find it difficult to value the erratic nature of the true black moon. But it's a point, not a planet, right? It's not a body. It's a point that is a function of the orbit of the moon around the Earth. So we shouldn't expect it to act like other planets is part of my reasoning. I have another video on the true versus the mean black moon here on YouTube that you should check out, which explains more fully my position. But basically, you know, you might get your Lilith natal report and see your true black moon at 4 Scorpio, and you say, well, I thought my Lilith was at 20 Libra or 25 Scorpio. It could be up to 30 degrees different from the mean position. So essentially that average position smooths it out so it seems to behave as a planet or an asteroid, as a moving body. And in fact, the true black moon zigzags back and forth, and to our brains it looks erratic. But given the archetype of the natural wild within us, instinctive wisdom, the cycles of nature as that's preloaded into our root chakra, it makes a lot of sense when you're willing to open up to what Lilith feels like as opposed to what you think a body in a chart should behave like. So anyway, I think that using the true black moon is like asking a woman what a woman is like, and using the mean position, which again is the most prominent one, is like asking a Barbie doll or a blow-up doll what a woman is like. You're not going to get anything. It's a plasticized idea of the mind. Oh, this would be good. Okay, so yeah, and Lilith, like a human, is complex. The true black moon has layers to it and it's complex. Anyway, so this, so I want to be clear about that because people have bought the report recently and emailed me with that question. It's based on the true black moon, and almost no other info out there on astrology is based on the true position. Okay, so I'm working to change minds and open hearts, and when you get in touch with that instinctive side of you, you'll see the truth of it. You'll see that it works. Some people write me and say, yes, I use the mean and the true position, and I just don't do that. I don't think that's valuable at all. So if you do that, that's great, but I don't care. Anyway, so let's talk about natal aspects with the moon. So I've just talked a little about the archetype of Lilith, this idea of the wild within us, this idea of an instinctive yes, no. Biochemical, hormonal, pheromonal. Your endocrine system is tied in with your energy field, and that affects your emotions and how you feel in your body. So it's all these different systems overlapping together. The idea is that your energy field and your body know what's good for you and what isn't good for you. So when we live in healthy relationship with Lilith, we listen to our bodies and we can honor our instincts even if we can't explain why we have to say yes, or why we want to say yes, or why in some context we just have to say no and we can't go with the program in some way. So that's the idea in the natal chart. And again, the Black Moon Lilith natal report will explain to you your placement in detail. So this is going to be about aspects with Mars. And aspects to Lilith indicate essentially how we learn about being Lilith with other people and through interactions with others. So let's just talk about Mars, and then I'll go through the major aspects: the conjunction, sextile, square, trine, opposition. Mars is that part of you that will say yes and no, that may stand up to fight for something. It's about desire. It's about self-assertion and defense. Sometimes Mars is an unthinking, responsive energy where you just, not dissimilar to Lilith, where you don't know why you have to say no to something. When we think about Lilith as representing it's the myth of the patriarchy, as a friend of mine once said. As far as the balance between masculine and feminine, Lilith represents a portion of the feminine that is sometimes not accepted by the mainstream, or it's vilified. People are made wrong, made the villain for living autonomously and listening to their bodies and not only listening to their linear logical minds, which is where we as a collective have seemed to, we think it's evolution, but it's exploring a phase of disconnection with nature. That's where we are, and that's why a lot of people are in a lot of pain right now. In terms of patriarchal info or info on the patriarchy, we are living through a disconnection or devaluation of the feminine, which leads to a disconnection from the earth and instinct and all things that are natural within us. Lots of people are waking up, of course, and the Lilith work I do is followed by a lot of people, because people need to have a positive way, a positive example of Lilith, or a way to understand how to live with this energy in a healthy way. But culturally, we're not quite there yet. So if you think about that's a corner of the feminine, then you think about Mars as generically representing a masculine energy within a person. And gender aside, sexual orientation aside, whatever pipes you have, however sexual orientation, transgender, all of us have Mars, a part of us that, has a get up and go function, a part of us that says yes and no. So we all have one. And if you think about that as generally indicating or representing a masculine energy, then you can see that Lilith, true Black Moon Lilith and Mars aspects kind of bring that into sharp focus. What is the right way to say yes and no? What's the right reason to say yes and no? So let's talk about the conjunction. Whatever the true Black Moon Lilith, the oscillating apogee, touches in a birth chart, it adds the need to be instinctive, but it also adds the need to be autonomous. So as I said, you can't go with the program. You can't do what others expect you to do. You have to go inward to sense, is this right for me? Now, we can train ourselves to learn that, but we also sometimes just find ourselves having a reaction to something. If you watched the other Lilith videos and read the report and the book, you know that it's this thing about what looks good on paper may not be good for you. Everyone might say, hey, you have to, whatever, you have to meet my friend Sally. She's amazing. Here are 10 things about Sally you will love, and she will love you. And the person sounds like, an advertisement for Sally. You're like, okay, sure, great. Sally sounds wonderful. As soon as you sit down with Sally, your skin crawls and something inside you, it feels toxic. You can't come up with any logical or justifiable reason why. You just don't mix. And that's chemistry. When we talk about hitting it off with somebody, that's chemistry, but also chemistry is when you, for no good reason, can't do something or can't be around a certain person. So, so then we talk about the defensive part of Mars. So you might find yourself off if you have Mars conjunct Lilith in the natal chart. Remember the true Black Moon. If you have that conjunct, then you might find yourself inexplicably defensive or irritable because something feels toxic, but two markers in the chart of unconscious response, unmediated, not thinking, are saying something's wrong. So you might actually find yourself angry because you are dealing with somebody that feels toxic to you, but you don't logically and overtly understand what's happening. So Mars conjunct Lilith can be a lot of reactivity. Now, if a Lilith person reacts in a Mars-inspired way, well, he or she might be vilified even more. And then that person might take, reflection, you're difficult to be around, or why are you so touchy? So, so one of the keys, I'm laughing because I have compassion for people who don't realize that they're reacting negatively because something feels toxic. So that could be in the environment or being around somebody, but it can also be about food. Mars is a very physical based energy, and Lilith is related to the endocrine system. And you might find yourself, in other words, irritable or angry because you ate something that doesn't agree with you, so nothing agrees with you. So with Lilith conjunct Mars, you need to really tune in to how your body receives food and what's actually nourishment. It could be that everybody says, you know, here are these three superfoods everyone has to eat, and you eat them and your body's totally turned off and you say, okay, well, great, that's not for me. Well, you can instinctively find what is for you, right? But you have to make sure your brain isn't telling you what you should be doing and then you do that. You have to listen to the body. So just think about different times when you've been inexplicably irritable. And it may be because something's going on in your body that doesn't feel good. Mars and Lilith separately are in my opinion, kind of classic examples of reactivity without thinking. And that can look very negative, but you can trust your body to tell you this isn't right for me. And one of the ways is I'm impatient. Well, why am I impatient? You might figure out it's something you ate, or some person you have to call later, you don't want to, or something you have to do tomorrow, or some person you saw hours ago and you feel messed up as a result. So getting to know your yes and no function. What does my body want? What do I want? Getting to know those things is incredibly important. Mars and Lilith also both have to do with desire and sexuality. Mars is a fiery desire, and True Blackman Lilith is a body-centered, earthy, fire and water, kind of a mix, kind of earth, fire, and water, but maybe not a lot of air. Don't quote me on that. Don't say Tom Jacobs said there's no air in Lilith. It just seems to be more body-centered, emotion-centered, fire-centered. It seems that way. I know I'll see on web pages and blogs like quoting me and making it very specific. That's fine. So a person with Lilith conjunct Mars may inexplicably desire somebody else, or may be inexplicably desirable to others, or both. And again, if you find some energy toxic, you'll know right away. If you find some energy wonderful, you'll know right away. So think about, if you have Mars conjunct Lilith, think about how you have been drawn to certain people and absolutely repelled or repulsed by other people. Now, the Lilith part of it with the endocrine system wrapped up with your energy field, the sense of smell is important. And so when you do want to be around somebody or connect with somebody, you will find yourself wanting to breathe in that person's smell, even if when you're doing it, you can't smell anything. Like you can't, your brain doesn't say, yes, that smells like vanilla perfume, or I don't know, a bologna sandwich, whatever. Even if you can't discern some actual smell, that person's energy makes you want to breathe that person in. That's kind of a Lilith thing. And so with Mars, extreme attraction, extreme dislike without knowing what's going on as well. So lots of conflict can result from this if you don't know why you're saying no to somebody. If they don't understand, if they don't respect your autonomy and you don't trust your body, you might have some conflict because you might feel you need to fight and somebody might still be desirous of you. So be aware that, learning what your body says is extremely important, and you honoring it and you not being willing to be around people who don't honor your own autonomy. Like yes means yes and no means no. And let's stop wasting our time, trying to push things on each other. So that's the conjunction. Can be a lot of reactivity. It's good to get grounded and trust that body. And you might need to change what you eat to discern, to figure out, to identify what might feel toxic to your body. You know, everybody, I know that my body does better. Like if I'm going to eat bird meat, my body does better with turkey. I can eat chicken, but something's not quite right about it. To fine tune that awareness. When I eat turkey, everything's fine. When I eat chicken, I don't know, something doesn't feel right. That's what we're talking about. Okay, now moving on to the sextile. Sextiles are triggers and stimulation. And sometimes sextiles can feel like somebody like poking you on the arm until you respond, like, hey, 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 I'm here, I'm here. So then you have the Mars, desire and defense function within you. Sextile, triggering and triggered by, because it's a back and forth thing, by your instinctive wild, your root chakra, you know, endocrine system, the natural wildness in your body that says yes and no. And so it can be, you know, a lot of breadcrumb trails and triggerings and fireworks. You know, when you're attracted to somebody, they're attracted to you. When it's mutual and the chemistry feels right, there can be a lot of back and forth, right? You can kind of feed each other's interests and excitement and passion. I haven't used that word, but for Mars and Lilith, passion is one of the keywords. So the sextile between them, you know, that part of, you know, you might have a defensive response triggered by Lilith people. You know, you might find Lilith, you might find other people finding you a Lilith figure and their defense response is triggered. The thing with sextiles is it's not conscious, and we're talking about, like, it's not consciously intentional often. And we're talking about two energies, Mars and Lilith, that respond without thinking. So there's a need to really get grounded if you have Mars sextile Lilith. If you have Lilith sextile anything or Mars sextile anything in your chart, you need to get grounded, because these are two fiery energies that can respond without thinking. So this can be very creative. Like I said with the passion idea, it can, you know, snowball, right? Same with creativity. Same with your experience in nature. Like you might forget that you really enjoy doing some kind of athletic exercise. You might really forget that, and then you do it and you're like, how could I ever stop doing this? Because it just is so energizing. Sextiles can energize us and inspire us and kind of push us to push ourselves to move forward. It can be a very gratifying kind of experience. If you let it, you know, work with you a little bit, you get a lot out of it. That can be that way. Moving on to the square. Square is about 90 degrees. Sextile is about 60 degrees. And I use 6 degrees of orb for the sextile. First of all, let me backtrack to the conjunction. I use 8 degrees for the conjunction, 6 for the sextile, 8 for the square, 8 for the trine, 8 for the opposition. So pretty standard major aspect orbs. So the square is pressure and friction. And one is pushing on the other, saying, do this differently. So if you are doing your Lilith, you may experience friction from or pressure from, or friction with or pressure from Mars people. If you're doing your Mars, you may feel pressure from or criticism from Lilith people. Now, Mars people are aggressive and assertive, and they're forthright and direct, and they just act. They're physical, they're sexual, they're athletic, they do. Lilith people are kind of, you know, both can be impulsive, but Lilith people are instinctive and they're feeling in their bodies and they can't be controlled. So if you think about that, somebody is being assertive and that person may feel pressed on by somebody else who doesn't want to be, you know, tied down. Lilith needs autonomy. So if you and somebody, if you have Mars square Lilith, you might find that it's weird control and evasive games, because part of you is trying to do something in this relationship or this dynamic, and the other person might not be willing to be pinned down. That person might also feel like you're trying to control that person by taking the lead. That would be a major theme here. If the Lilith person takes the lead, the Mars person can, you know, wonder what's going on, because Mars is used to being direct and taking the lead. So there can be tension in there too, and maybe even criticism on how to do things. You know, you should do it this way, you should do it that way. But if you understand that it's just different ways of tapping into physicality and fire and desire and instinct and smell and all that, then it doesn't have to be all bad. Everything I teach with Lilith says doesn't have to be bad. Just understand what the energies are trying to do together. And here with Mars, you know, it's an energy of directness and action and leadership and physicality. Well, if that always has to lead, a Lilith person might come along and say, hey, why don't you try it this way? Or, hey, relax for a moment, you know, let me desire you and see how that works. So there can be that kind of dialogue. Now, if people don't trust each other or if they feel threatened, of course, arguments and tension and friction and criticism may come up. And remember, since both energies, Mars and True Black Moon Lilith, can be defensive and can behave or respond without thinking, so they react, you can actually have kind of barriers and walls people put up to defend themselves, or even outright arguments and conflict sometimes. Depends on how you know, safe people feel and if they're willing to explore relating together and exploring different energies. The trine is a boosting, supportive energy. Don't assume that trines are good and squares or other aspects are bad, because trines can lead to complacency. Trines can make you sit back and not do anything. Whatever one energy is doing in a natal trine, the other energy says, yeah, keep doing it. So if you're Mars, like if you're aggressive, your Lilith will support it and almost cheerlead it. If you are afraid to hurt other people because you don't want to be aggressive, so you're timid, right? If you have that thing, because some Mars people who have experienced, you know, trauma or abuse or violence or control issues, sometimes they don't want to be Mars because nobody wants to be the kind of person who hurt him or her. That's a human truth to work with, especially when it comes to Lilith stories and Mars stories too. A lot of what I do has to do with, like in my counseling and energy work practice, has to do with reclaiming certain energies, including Lilith and Mars, and other energies where people who fit those profiles may have, you know, been difficult teachers for us, and so we don't own those parts of ourselves. So anyway, owning these energies is really important. And that reminds me, I need to say something else that should have gone in the introduction. If you don't use an energy in your chart intentionally, it will come to you anyway. That is why Mars can get a bad rap. That's why Saturn and Pluto can get a bad rap. That's why everything might get a bad rap at different times for different reasons. If you don't use the energy. So if you're not trusting your body, Lilith situations may come to you. If you're not, you know, acting forthright in alignment, if you're not honoring your body, you know, Mars issues, right? If you're not assertive and direct, if you're not saying yes, please, and no, thank you when you mean it, Mars issues might fly at you in the form of other people's ungrounded Mars energies. So with these two together, with all these aspects, that's why there's a lot of potential for reactivity if you don't use your energies intentionally. Like I said, with the True Black Moon Lilith Natal Report, you can read how to use yours intentionally. So the trine between Mars and Lilith may open up, you know, the floodgates to attraction, desire, you know, but it also may open up the floodgates of your old issues regarding not feeling safe around Mars energy and or Lilith energy. So I want to get beyond looking at these strictly in terms of gender and gender roles, but I recognize that a lot of people may feel in alignment with certain, you know, one gender or the other, or gender roles, right? And this idea of like, well, men seem to be in my life in this way, or women seem to be in my life in this way. So sometimes with these aspects also, you have to overcome stereotypes about what your gender is like and what the other gender is like, and also, you know, what other people are about. Okay, so like it's not true that all women anything or all men anything. It's not true. So the trine will flow information, but also stimulation, but also may open up the door for you to deal with any issues about one of these two energies or both that you have a problem with. Let's say, for example, that as a kid, not much, but a little bit, you were bullied a little bit. Well, let's say that you meet somebody and it could be a friendship or a love relationship where there's a lot of sparks, and somehow that person activates your Mars. Well, you might remember that bullying. Or let's say you were in a relationship where you felt the other person tried to control you a little bit. And that was hard for you, kind of a Lilith, a negative Lilith thing. Well, let's say with the trine, somebody else trines you, and and I'm not talking about between charts, but if you do your Lilith, somebody else might trine you as your Mars, like activate it, right? And the aspect gets activated within you. And so you might find that you have to deal with that person coming at you, even with a positive energy, might make you feel like, whoa, that's too much. So that's what I'm talking about here. It can open up. They want to work together, but again, with these energies, we have to heal whatever we carry from the past. Now, the opposition, the last one of the 5 here, was where something is opposite, right? 180 degrees. Again, I use an orb of 8 degrees. So it could be 170 or 190 degrees, right? Or sorry, 172, 188. And I don't know if I did that right. Sorry, little Neptune problem here. The opposition is like a standoff or confrontation. Really, it's showing you something about what you're doing or feeling or thinking or believing that you can't see in yourself. So Mars Lilith, to learn about your Lilith, you need Mars activations from the opposite energy. So wherever your Lilith is, you need someone who's somewhat Marsy people to show you a different way to be, so you can become clear, oh yeah, that's how I keep behaving, or that's what I'm about. And same the other way, you're learning about Mars in you by interactions with Lilith people or Lilith style interactions with people, where you're like, I'm gonna go this way, and somebody else like responds instinctively and doesn't want to be led, right? Mars can be leadership or pulled along behind. So there's a need for a really deep level of honesty, but honest engagement with the opposition. And it might seem like we don't speak the same language. And if people don't trust each other, this aspect can feel very alienating. Even within yourself, like you're working on healing Lilith, but when you encounter Mars people, there's this disconnect. If you don't trust yourself, you might find other people trying to get you to not trust yourself more, and then that would wake the part of you up that says, wait a minute, no, I need to trust myself. So there's that opposition, and that can show us what we're doing or not doing that we might need to own and change, or own and keep doing. So that's the idea with the opposition, and it can seem like some conflict and misunderstanding. The oppositions have somebody saying to you, do you know this about yourself? And we can take that humbly, or we can take that and respond defensively if we feel threatened or don't trust or don't feel safe. So you think about, physical dynamics, sexual dynamics with Mars, and then you learn about your Lilith through finding yourself engaging with Mars and needing to say no. So this can get a little hairy sometimes, but it's all about coming back to the body and trusting what you need to do and listening to your body and your energy field. So again, if you want to find out about your own Black Moon Lilith, the oscillating apogee, the true Black Moon, get the Lilith Natal Report from tdjacobs.com. It goes through house sign and aspect, as well as the natal aspects, as well as the transits and progressions to your natal true Black Moon for the next 5 years. Again, that's at tdjacobs.com. And check out the Lilith Healing the Wild book and all the other resources at tdjacobs.com. Thanks for watching, and take care.